Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I'd like to discuss the major hurdles to overcome in order to reverse Brexit properly, as a new report says that 2/3 of Britons want a referendum on rejoining, if you don't mind, please. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So today is the 50th anniversary of the UK joining the EEC, which was, of course, the precursor to the EU. A little bit annoying, if I'm honest, that we are where we are on such an occasion. In Ireland, where they joined at the same time, there are celebrations and published retrospectives in the media about just what has been gained from 5 decades of membership. Meanwhile, over here, we're experiencing an increasing disconnect between fantasy politics and what a growing number of people in this country realise we've lost. A survey commissioned by The Independent indicates that 2/3 of people would welcome a referendum on rejoining the EU. Now, there has been a steady decline in support for Brexit ever since it became a reality. So many people either believed the lies, or even if they thought it was a bad idea. We know some people voted Conservative in 2019 to get Brexit done, and they knew it wasn't a good idea, but they thought, well, it won't make that much of a difference. We'll still get on with our lives. I think too many people, too many ordinary people, just couldn't bring themselves to believe that any UK government would inflict such reckless damage on their own country. I mean, you wouldn't, would you? They thought that if the Tories wanted to go ahead with it, they must have a plan for at least limiting the damage. I know all these people who are pro-EU are really ramping up the doom and gloom, but the government must have a plan, surely. But no. For the Tories, Brexit was either about getting what a small number of individuals wanted and to hell with the rest, or the result of a political trap, willingly walked into, for the sake of keeping the party united for a short while longer. Brexiteers are now desperately trying to claim that people voted leave for the sake of this intangible sense of sovereignty. Some will have done it for purely ideological reasons, but many wanted to see some benefits. They wanted their lives to get better in some way. Ordinary people have suffered, got nothing to show for the downsides. I keep asking ordinary people who support Brexit, not the ones who are clearly paid to support Brexit, but the ones who just genuinely still support it. What have you gained, I ask? What have you gained? I've yet to receive an answer. Some Brexiteers wanted to leave the EU because they were told membership prevented us controlling our own borders. So that sort of sense of national control at work there. It was nonsense, of course, but they believed it. Now they think the situation is way worse, and Brexiteers are having to come up with ever more extreme solutions. Oh, no, we need to leave the Council of Europe. Oh, it's the European Court of Human Rights that's the problem now. Some Brexiteers wanted, or Brexit supporters, I should say, wanted more NHS funding. They believed the bus. Tories try to claim, well, the NHS has received this extra funding. Jacob Rees-Mogg says it every time it comes up. Oh, the NHS has already received this funding. But people aren't stupid. People may be ignorant, but they're not stupid. If the NHS, actually a lot of people are stupid, but by and large they're not. If the NHS is struggling to cope, many understand that any attempts to persuade them that funding has gone up is clearly just an exercise in dodgy accountancy, as indeed it is. If the funding had increased, the service would have gotten better, not worse. If you put more funding into something, it will get, even if the funding's not spent in the most efficient way, it will still get better. Nothing gets worse with more funding. Some supported Brexit because they wanted better job opportunities. They were promised better pay and conditions. The irony is that our new post-Brexit immigration policy makes it easier for foreign workers to get well-paid jobs in the UK. There's no barrier to a foreign worker from anywhere in the world, never mind the EU, anywhere in the world, getting a well-paid job in this country. You'll easily get the points, no problem. But it is much harder to do the lower paid ones. So the upshot of our post-Brexit immigration policies are that UK workers are funneled into lower paid jobs. So whatever the reason why so many millions of people voted for Brexit in 2016, and there were many people voting for different reasons, and then, of course, Conservative in 2019 to make it happen, they didn't get what they wanted. What's more, they can see that they didn't get what they wanted. Even the ones who sort of thought it was a bad idea, but we need the government to move on, we're sick of all the divisive politics. Well, how's that going? It's still causing arguments now. And it's not just that the payout didn't come. If that were the case, people would just shrug their shoulders and expect the government to move on, the Brexiteers would have won. Because it's like, well, we've left now, let's just get on with it. And some have that attitude. The problem is that too many have had their living standards lowered. There's more people now in poverty. The people already in poverty have plumbed new depths of desperation. Unfortunately, in the very short term, 2/3 of people polling a desire for a referendum on rejoining the EU won't actually achieve a full reversal of Brexit. There are currently a number of difficulties. That is not to say that the news isn't good. It is actually very hopeful. The first group who need to change their minds, there's three basic groups who need to change their mind, and it all follows one after the other as well. There's a definite process here. It's the public. And you think, well, you just said 2/3 of the public want a referendum on rejoining. Well, even if the poll turns out to be accurate, and I haven't seen the details, the majority don't determine who our governments are. Right now, both Labour and the Conservatives are targeting relatively small numbers of voters who don't want Brexit reversing. Not by choice, but because those are the ones who are going to determine the result of the next election. Hence their political stance on the issue. Labour are at least promising alignment to get us on the path back. It's the right direction. The issue is they say, well, we're going to go this far and then stop. It's like, yeah, no, you're not. But that's fine, because there are stages to going back anyway. But those key target voters need to want to go back before politicians will change their position. The good news is that there are a couple of ways this can happen. Now, my preference, because this is by far the quickest way to make it happen, is proportional representation fairly swiftly. This would fundamentally change the groups of voters who unlock power. With such a system, the political dynamic changes out of all recognition overnight. It would give more power to the majority. But although I'm hopeful I will see PR come into Westminster elections, I'm not sure I can realistically expect it soon. So the second route is the slower route, and that is for a growing majority of people wanting to end the Brexit madness to challenge those who are resisting. Those still sticking with Brexit, who are crucial in elections. They're suffering just as much as anyone else. You don't have to persuade them to do you a favour. They are suffering as well, and they will benefit from a reversal. And friends and family can point this out in a way that gobshites like me struggle. Once that crucial block of voters starts to have a different attitude, it will immediately unlock a different attitude from politicians, as if by magic. The problem, I think, with some anti-Brexit activism at the moment is there's focus on politicians and the public, as it needs to be, but I think there's sometimes too much focus on the politicians, as if the politicians could just take a different stance and that would be that. Politicians don't win elections by being out of kilter with public opinion. They can follow public opinion, or they can try and shape it, but they cannot go in a different direction and win. When the key section of the voting public is anti-Brexit, then by automatic process of whatever system of democracy we have, the following government will be aligned with that sentiment. It's just how it works. But then there's the EU itself. See, right now, if we all decided as one, if we all decided, look, this is a terrible mistake, we've woken up now, this is really bad, and all the political parties, including the Conservatives, all magically argue to rejoin the EU. Look, this was bad, this is a terrible mistake. The EU would say, no. I'm sure you get a sense of national arrogance in all countries to an extent. We have a real problem with jingoistic, misplaced pride in Britain. This sense of British exceptionalism, which allowed us to think that we would somehow hold all the cards in negotiating with the trading bloc with an economy several times the size of ours. Well, the same sense of exceptionalism can exist on the pro-EU side as well as the pro-Brexit side, although it's much more prevalent on the pro-Brexit side. You know, people that think all it takes is for our politicians to admit the mistake and then we can just go to the EC, we'd like to rejoin, please, could we start the process? We're never going back to how things were. For a start, we won't get all the benefits of our old membership back. There's no chance. So in a sense, it's not actually possible to reverse Brexit in the literal sense. And as soon as you point that out to the public who right now want a referendum on rejoining, will see a bit of a drop in support for that when they realise actually it means some things that they're not so sure about. This is why we need to build up an absolutely rock solid opposition to Brexit amongst the public before we even concern ourselves with the politicians. We will get some concessions. There will be concessions. This idea that we won't get any of the old opt-outs back. Well, EU membership is a negotiated process. It's not just a take it or leave it cookie cutter arrangement like the single market, for example. You know, we won't get everything. And we won't know what we can get until we negotiate. And the negotiations would have to be after the referendum or the manifesto promise. So we have to go into the process with the understanding that what might be red lines for some people may not be achievable. Things like currency, things like Schengen. It will not be possible to hold a referendum where politicians say, oh, no, we'll still keep the pound and we'll not join Schengen. It may not be possible. We can try and negotiate those opt-outs. We may get them, but we may not. And all of this argy-bargy will put the EU off, because even at the point where politics just transitions to maybe we should rejoin, this argy-bargy will kick off again. You know, remember when we first applied to join the EEC, we failed. First time we tried, we got knocked back. France took the view that we didn't really believe in the political project, that we had this mercantile attitude and it might be problematic. Now, the fears may or may not have been well-founded. I've heard different points of view from within the EU Parliament. But it is certainly true we had a mercantile approach to what was a peace project for the founding members. We were on board with the peace project as well. Of course we were. It was the UK government who suggested the concept of this European Union at its genesis. But we didn't think we should be part of it. It was economics, not the pursuit of peace, which drove us to apply. Well, guess what's going to drive us to reapply? You know, what is all the arguments for reversing Brexit right now? It's not peace, is it? I'm not doing videos about how much more peaceful it would be if we were back in the EU. No, it's economics. The politicians will still rage against the politics of the EU. What is going to cause people to change their minds, and what will continue to cause them to change their minds, is economics. The economic constraints that Brexit has imposed on us. So our motivation for wanting to reverse Brexit will be mercantile again, just like it was in the 60s. There are those in the EU who feel that Brexit is proof the UK didn't really fit in with those ideals. Now, I suppose the better news these days is there are way more members who also joined for mercantile reasons, weren't all that bothered about the peace project. But it must be pointed out that although I discuss Brexit on a regular basis because it overshadows British politics, it is also largely done and dusted in the EU. You see the odd article, yeah, you may see something in Le Monde or Der Spiegel or something, but it's usually it's the pointing and laughing variety of article, or maybe it's sympathy for what was once a close and respected partner, you know, committed driving force behind the realisation of the single market. But right now, the EU have no immediate interest in the UK, even joining the single market, let alone the EU proper. There are voices there. We do have allies. We do have people in the European Parliament who are encouraging towards us. But we need to not only sort ourselves out with a clear political desire to rejoin, which includes the Conservatives getting on board with it, but we also have to build up trust again. You know, we will join again. And there's no, as I say, there's no shortage of MEPs encouraging us to get on the path. But they're clear that it's a path. It's not. We're not at the door. We're not there where we can just go back in. You know, even once we settle the issue in the UK, there are bridges to be built with the EU. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button. If you'd like to support the channel further, the join button for memberships. And until next time, I'll see you later.